Welcome back to Typically Unique. It's just me today, and I am going to read one of the court documents. And this is the reply to state's response to defendant's motion in limine number 1 regarding inflammatory evidence. So let me see. I'm trying this. I'm reading it on another screen, so it is bigger for my eyes to see, but you should be able to follow along. Okay. Comes now Brian C. Kohberger, by and through his attorneys of record, and hereby replies to the state's response to his motion in limine seeking an order regarding inflammatory evidence. Mr. Kohberger, in his motion, recognized the rules of evidence and noted that prejudicial evidence is subject to a balancing test. He agreed that Idaho case law endorsed the balancing test for prejudicial evidence. His seeks an order preventing the state from trying its case in an inflammatory manner. I'm using my teaching voice. I hope that helps. The state's objection is based in semantics. Mr. Kohberger's motion seeks an order preventing the state from introducing inflammatory evidence. Mr. Kohberger does not yet know what exhibits the state will offer. He does not yet know what testimony the state will elicit, and he does not yet know the arguments the prosecutor will make. He seeks an order preventing his trial from being infected with inflammatory evidence. The Idaho Supreme Court has made decisions that pronounce what is not inflammatory, such as photographs, as both parties state. The court has also pronounced what is inflammatory. In State versus Ellington, 151 Idaho, 253, page 3D, 727, 2011, and in the context of prosecutorial misconduct, 2 areas of questioning witnesses were found to be inflammatory and calculated to inflame the passions and prejudices of the jury. In Ellington, the charge was second-degree murder, with the death being caused by the deceased being run over by Ellington's vehicle. During trial, the prosecutor called the deceased's husband to the stand and asked repeated questions, beginning the sentence with a variation of the phrase, "run over your wife." In the same case, the prosecutor elicited testimony from a witness expert about leaving his employment shortly after working on the case because of the disturbing nature of the incident. The court found these lines of questioning inflammatory. The court said appeals to emotion, passion, or prejudice of the jury through use of inflammatory tactics are impermissible. And that is citing State versus Phillips, 144 Idaho, 8287, 156 P3D, 583, 588, 2007. Also citing State versus Babb, 125 Idaho, 934, 942, 877 P2D, 905, 913, and that was 1994. The Idaho Court of Appeals considered conduct in closing arguments when the prosecutor argued that the jury should be irritated with the defense that had been presented. The court said the prosecutor's appeal to the jurors' emotions was overt and express, conveying not simply that the witness's testimony was implausible or lacking credibility, but that jurors ought to respond to the testimony with irritation and resentment. Such appeals to emotion during closing argument are plainly improper. And they're citing State versus Phillips again. The Idaho Supreme Court weighed in on evidence that should not have been admitted. This is the quote, although we conclude that the evidence admitted in error did not contribute to the verdict in McGrath's case, we nevertheless caution prosecutors against seeking the admission of needlessly inflammatory evidence in order to sustain a conviction. We also caution judges who condone this practice. Prosecutors and judges who countenance the admission of evidence that speaks solely to a defendant's character or inflames the jury run the risk of having to retry cases in which there is already substantial and probative evidence of a defendant's guilt. The state cites the court to State versus Levitt, 1989. Mr. Kohberger does not disagree with the balancing test in the IRE 403 or relevant case law. However, the state has thousands of photographs, hours of video footage, and hundreds of potential witnesses. He seeks an order preventing the case from being tried in an inflammatory manner. If inflammatory evidence is presented, it is often impossible to undo its effect. He seeks to protect the integrity of his trial. All right. So basically, to me, this is the defense saying we don't have a problem with evidence being presented. It is just the language. We want to make sure that the language being used when questioning witnesses or presenting evidence is not on purpose trying to be inflammatory, trying to get those emotions up. Okay, that is this court document. I will be back with another one. See you then. Bye.